All right, so the arrow of time, if you consider atomic or molecular scale processes, you cannot recognize the arrow of time. In other words, for all we know, the physics of atomic scale processes can be reversed, and there would be no difference. Okay, so whether the process goes forward or backwards doesn't matter. Now what happens is somewhere along the line the scaling gets the arrow of time. Okay, just picks it up somehow somewhere in the context of I guess the macroscopic world. We start to experience the arrow of time. For instance, a glass of milk falls off the counter and shatters. If you ran a film of that backwards, you would know that something's wrong. It doesn't. Things don't happen like that. They don't fall, jump up onto the counter and fill it with, and the glass all comes together. All the shards of glass come together where they were supposed to be, and then it fills up with milk. You would know that that's something wrong. But on a microscopic or a molecular scale, you wouldn't be able to tell. For instance, if you were in the environment of the molecules that make up the milk, you wouldn't be able to tell whether you're on the counter or on the floor in the cup. For the most part, there would be no indicators. Perhaps, if you were looking at a milk molecule on the surface of the glass and then it finds itself on the surface of the floor or something like that, even that, not enough of a change to determine an arrow of time, and especially if you get it on a smaller scale, atomic scales. So it seems like there's got to be a larger context to provide for the arrow of time. Now, of course, this is also one of the problems with evolution, theory of evolution, trying to account for order and information from random processes. The random processes don't provide the kind of order and information that's needed. Somehow physical reality gets the arrow of time through a larger context, and it seems to be very information-rich context. Now, how could the background, zero-point background quantum foam energy acting on atomic scale and molecular scales provide for an arrow of time? Not just an arrow of time, but you also have to provide for the order of atomic theory and chemical reactions and so forth. All those things, the environment is controlling all those things. So the environment controls how atoms are structured in such a way that they will interact in certain ways to provide for the chemicals that are necessary to build building blocks for material objects and of course biological living things. So anyways, I got a couple theories here. You've probably seen, this is an illustration, you've probably seen this. I can't find this anymore on the internet. There used to be a great video. I know the guy who put this together, see, I was trying to find out his name and so forth. Won some kind of award or something for the graphic, but I can't find it anywhere on the internet any longer. But basically, it's this is a still shot of what it was. Now, you imagine those the green blobs there actually represent the energy density of the quantum background. And so the energy densities is changing in all different shapes and forms. It's constantly fluctuating. The theory is that these fluctuations are random, and that they are they're random fluctuations, and they're based on probability. Okay, now Einstein had a problem with so much probability, and I think more and more scientists are starting to have problems with this whole probability wave as opposed to causes. See, now I wrote up here somewhere, say, here it is, causes, not probability. Okay, so things are caused. Now, here's another area of probability versus causes, and that's radioactive half-lives. Okay, radioactive half-life and cosmic rays. So I'm saying, rather than say, okay, the half-life is just a probability with no cause, there's got to be something in the environment that's causing the beta decay or alpha decay, whatever the nuclear decay is taking place. There's something in the environment that's triggering that. Now, I'm going to suggest cosmic rays as a good candidate for giving radioactive materials their half-lives. Of course, depending on the strength of the rays and depending on the strength of the nuclear bonds, you're going to have, of course, the different half-lives. But at least, I'm trying to ascribe some kind of cause for this. That just doesn't all of a sudden doesn't happen. There was never any kind of concrete reality to a probability wave. Is mathematically understand that it's a correct approximation, correct modeling mathematically. But what about the interpretation of the reality and the causes behind it? So, anyways, we have this quantum background film, and you see my little segue there. Now, you know what a segue? It's got the servo motors, and they're going constantly giving little kicks to the wheels to keep the thing upright. And those would seem, I think, if you probably charted those kicks, especially if you're driving the Segway on any kind of surface, uneven surface, even if it was an even surface, or even if you're trying to just get it to stand upright, I would think that you've charted those kicks, the little torques to the wheels, you might come up with something that seems pretty random. But I'm suggesting that the quantum background is not as random as it's said to be. That rather, just like the torques given to the Segway, you have energy densities describing or actually giving the attributes to atomic and molecular scale to cause it to behave certain ways. Okay, now that would provide some reason for why there's so much order in, say, the periodic table. Okay, because these things they're not random. Okay, and somewhere now, you might accuse me, this is the God of the gaps kind of theory, that somewhere along the line you're getting the information. The information has to come from somewhere in the relationship between energy and matter. You're saying, well, this is a God of the gaps type of theory, but I have several problems with God of the gaps arguments. And that is, you really don't have a God of the gaps. You have to have a God of everything. Not just the gaps, but everything that's filled in already. There's been, philosophically in this, philosophy of science, this idea of natural causes. And if something's naturally caused, then you don't need to ascribe it to God. However, where do you get nature from? What do you mean? What do you mean natural cause? Nature has to have a cause itself. Nature itself is that's the definition of God. God is that which creates nature. And you have these law-like behaviors of many of the observations we make in terms of matter and energy, and those laws, you could see as sort of the involuntary energies that God has arranged. In the same way, you have the involuntary body functions like digesting your food and so forth. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. Now, the Bible says that God rested after the creation period. I am saying that one way to interpret that rest is that the what's scientific world usually calls natural causes is actually the involuntary aspects of God's involvement in the distribution of energy and matter, and the regulation of energy and matter. There's quite a bit of it that, and of course you have varying degrees of things that are voluntary and involuntary. Or some functions that you can control, but you don't have to, and those kinds of things. And I think that's the way the Bible presents God's relationship to the created universe. And if you ever watched many of my videos before, you know that I don't believe in the Big Bang. I don't believe in creation out of nothing. That the Bible doesn't promote the idea of creation out of nothing. The universe that we're experiencing, there is a finite, chronologically finite event where prior to the universe we're experiencing, there was God. God pre-existed. God was omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, and so forth before the creation of the universe. So what we call creation of the universe is not a creation out of nothing, but rather that God has retracted His own being in such a way to provide an environment for finite beings like ourselves. So that's how my theories are constructed. Now, I put this little thing here. This is up there in that corner there. Okay, these are on the, if you look in the screen on the left is the traditional double slit experiment. You see you got the two slits, you got the waves going through and cause the interference pattern. Now, I think there's something in the environment that provides. Now, on the right here, I have another way of doing the experiment, and this is, as you can see, you have the two slits, but the environment is filled up in the background there with the mass on at least one side, to see what happens if you interfere with the environment in that way. You're not actually counting or making observations about which slit the photon or electron goes through, but you see the environment's a little bit different. There's this there's different area for the a different volume for the wave to behave. So if there's something else in that environment that provides for the interference of single electron with itself, single photon with itself, then maybe doing an experiment that way might reveal something about changing the environment. Now I did this graphic before, but I put a little more detail in it. Okay, you see the different frames. Now those frames are space-time histories. Okay, now as far as free will versus predestination, in that first frame we have an arrow, and what we're saying is from the point there's a free will agent like a human deciding to control events, and they're trying to move things, in this case, to the left, and not just coincidentally. I mean, that's not necessarily, but it could be happening. Let's suppose it's a left-leaning liberal or somebody who's trying to interfere with the political environment in such a way to move things to the left. Or let's suppose it's Hitler trying to destroy people that he doesn't like. And so he's free to act. But you see what's happening, the environment, the quantum background environment is changing reality in such a way that even though he is consciously moving in the direction he wants to go, eventually see what happens. His free will is overridden, and what he wanted to accomplish disappears from reality, because every time he accomplishes something, he's actually encountering a new environment. And I think this is how God, I said this before, this is how God allows us to act with our own sovereign desires and so forth. But in the end, he gets what he wants. Now, this other little graphic here, you see the three. Let's put it over here. Okay. That's a wave. Okay, going around. It's got. It just so happens, the wave. If it's going around the electron going around a nucleus, it has to be an integer. It can't have a half of a wave. It has to end up making a full cycle. And so that's a super low energy there. It's only got 3 crests, 3 troughs. Now, what happens? There's a super high energy wave. This one here looks like a flower, but basically it's super high energy. In other words, super high frequency. Now, what I did was I imagined a magnification of the super high energy wave, and you see what's happening. If the energy gets high enough, it begins to interfere with itself. And you know that light, as it's going through a heterogeneous environment, let's say from the air into water, it changes its angle of trajectory, because the light wave actually gets dragged into the water at a different angle. It actually is almost like a friction type of event. But I'm proposing that perhaps this is just a random shot in the dark here, that this is what gives mass to particles, that when their frequency starts to overlap. I mean, that the amount of energy in a nucleus is an incredible amount, and somehow that opens up the basically what I'm saying is a massive particle is actually like a vortex into the quantum foam. It's a vortex into extra dimensionality. That's one of the things that describes the behavior of mass. So that it's not really massive objects are not really attracting one another. What's happening is they're lowering the the energy density in the vicinity is causing like a vacuum, a vacuum in the vacuum. You know, what used to be called the vacuum, which is, of course, this here quantum foam. And so what happens is, you know, you get the like it's pressure. It's like a pressure difference. And that's what's happening, you know, why it seems like massive bodies are attracting each other. But that's sort of besides the point with the arrow time thing. The arrow time thing is that, you know, there has to be some kind of cause, something introducing all that direction and all that information into the environment that's describing, you know, it's providing for an arrow of time. Otherwise, it's just there shouldn't exist. What should happen is everything should just be reversible, completely reversible. You would never have. See, what I'm saying is I'm saying that you know, in the world of physics, I'm not the first one to suggest this. You know, in the world of physics, you have not just energy and matter, but you have information. That the quantum background actually provides an information field, and I'm saying information in such a way that it's applied information. That, you know, that the environment is actually applying information to subatomic, atomic, and molecular environment. And you know, this is what, you know, provides for not just all the order and all the meaning in physical reality, but also the idea that God knows the future and controls the future and stuff, you know, and so forth. That there's got to be a mechanical way to do this. You just can't control things without actually controlling them. See, that's one of the problems with creation ex nihilo and the way that I think the Christian theological community had always tried to present things like miracles and things like creation in a very sort of magical, you know, almost like it's magic. There's not an actual threshold or matrix where the mechanics of what God is doing and the mechanics that we experience actually ever intersect. But that doesn't make sense. It you know, somewhere along the line, God is intersecting with our reality in physical ways. This one of the other areas of confusion. Often God is presented as being non-physical. Well, there's nowhere in the Bible that says God's not non-physical. It says he's not flesh and blood. It says he's not visible, but you can be very physical and not be visible. If you are a being who exists in greater dimensionality, and you know, God being infinite dimensionality would be invisible, even if we were able to increase our dimensionality, there would still be aspects of God that are invisible. So that once again, I'm trying to stress correct thinking, scientific thinking about the nature of God, the nature of spirituality. Spirituality is pretty much the old-fashioned word for supernatural, and that's pretty much the old-fashioned word for extra-dimensional. That God is real and has to, you know, the reason that he's unseen is not because he's abstract. You know, a lot of Christian philosophers, including Greg Bahnsen, confuse abstract for spiritual. You know, God is not an abstraction. He has to be, you know, real, and his reality is hidden from us, but it's real. It's hidden from us dimensionally, and the same thing with the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, this idea of the probability wave or quantum fluctuations going in and out of existence. Well, that's bad science. It doesn't make sense. It's not even, it's not even a logical, coherent phrase to say things go in and out of existence. They're going in and out of our dimensionality. They don't go in and out of existence. If something doesn't exist, you're not going to get anything from it. You know, I mean, this getting something from nothing, everybody knows, is a logical impossibility. So what happened is, man-centric, anthropocentric thinking causes people to say stuff like, well, if we can't get a handle on it, then it doesn't exist. Well, if it goes into extra dimensions, you can't get a handle on it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And right now, I mean, as science progresses, deeper and deeper into the quantum background, extra dimensionality is necessary. There has to be an extra dimensional substrate to explain everything. I mean, even something as basic as where did we come from? A child, 3, 4, 5-year-old, begins to ask themselves, and maybe even ask their parents, where did everything come from? Because they have this understanding that you can't have an uncaused cause. You can't have something has to have an eternal existence to begin with. And that's why the quantum fluctuation model is so misinformed and so dark ages and ignorant, is because you don't have things going in and out of existence. It doesn't make sense. That's a retarded, non-scientifical nonsense. So it's the right now it's the philosophical world that has had a handle on that for thousands of years. Like the Jastrow says that the scientists of cosmologists, astrophysicists, so forth, they scaled the mountain, and when they finally get on the top, they found theologians have been up there for 2,000 years. Well, not just theologians are up on top of that mountain, but even Sunday school children who can make that obvious connection and can connect those obvious dots that you don't get things going in and out of existence. That's just I think that's just a mechanism for the material philosophers, those people like Carl Sagan and his bunch, who refused to believe that there could be intelligent, intellectual being that's hidden from us dimensionally. So I hope that I've done some damage to that bad thinking that has actually, permeated the Christian theological world as well, because they have, Christians have ascribed to such nonsense as creation ex nihilo, which is, just as nonsensical as the idea of quantum fluctuations bringing particles in and out of existence. These particles are going in and out of our dimensionality, which is hardly the same as existence.